Welcome to today's Blueprint News. In this video, we take a deep dive into the latest CBC News Poll Tracker, analyzing the polling averages as of March 30th, 2025. How are the parties stacking up? Where are the key battlegrounds? Let's break it all down. National overview. At the national level, the Liberal Party continues to hold the lead with 41.2% support. However, the Conservatives remain close behind at 37.8%, making this a highly competitive race. The New Democratic Party, NDP, stands at 9.1%, holding steady but trailing significantly behind the two frontrunners. Meanwhile, the Bloc Québécois, which primarily contests seats in Quebec, sits at 5.8% in the national tally. The Green Party is polling at 2.8%, while the People's Party of Canada, PPC, holds 2.3%. Other smaller parties make up 0.9% of the national vote share. With the Liberals and Conservatives locked in a tight race, every vote will count in key battleground regions. The NDP will be looking to expand its support base, while the Bloc Québécois remains a dominant force in Quebec. The Greens and PPC, though polling in the low single digits, could still influence the final outcome by shifting votes in closely contested ridings. With momentum shifting and debates ahead, the coming weeks will be crucial for all parties. British Columbia overview. In British Columbia, the battle between the Liberals and Conservatives is razor thin. The Conservative Party holds a slight edge with 39.9%, while the Liberals are right behind at 39.4%. A difference of just half a percentage point. The New Democratic Party, NDP, stands at 13%, maintaining a significant presence in the province but well behind the two frontrunners. The Green Party, which has historically found strong support in BC, is polling at 4.2%. Meanwhile, the People's Party of Canada, PPC, sits at 2.1%, and other parties account for 1.4% of the projected vote share. With BC's diverse political landscape, this election is set to be a battleground province. The Liberals are looking to hold on to key urban ridings in Vancouver, while the Conservatives aim to expand their lead in rural areas and the interior. The NDP still maintains pockets of strong support, particularly on Vancouver Island and in some lower mainland districts, but they face an uphill battle against the dominant Liberal and Conservative campaigns. Meanwhile, the Green Party, despite its relatively low numbers, could play a spoiler role in certain ridings, especially in areas where environmental issues are a key concern. With such a tight race in British Columbia, every vote will matter. Will the Conservatives solidify their lead, or will the Liberals surge ahead? And how much impact will the NDP and Greens have on the final outcome? Alberta overview. In Alberta, the Conservative Party continues to hold a commanding lead with 53.9% of the vote share. Despite efforts from other parties, Alberta remains one of the most secure regions for the Tories. The Liberal Party is polling at 28.7%, showing some gains in urban centers like Calgary and Edmonton, but still trailing far behind the Conservative stronghold. The New Democratic Party, NDP, sits at 11.3%, relying on its base of support in parts of Edmonton. The Green Party is at 1.9%, while the People's Party of Canada, PPC, is seeing a small but notable presence at 3.1%. Other parties make up 1.1% of the projected vote share. With the Conservatives maintaining a massive lead, the real battle in Alberta may not be about who wins the most seats, but rather how much ground the Liberals and NDP can gain in key ridings. The Liberals will be focusing on Calgary, where they've made gains in recent years, while the NDP will be hoping to hold on to their Edmonton support. The PPC's 3.1% share could also play a role in splitting the right-wing vote, though it remains unclear if it will significantly impact Conservative dominance. Alberta remains a stronghold for the Conservatives, but with shifting dynamics in urban centers, could we see some surprises? Saskatchewan and Manitoba overview. The Conservative Party holds a strong lead in these two provinces, polling at 47.2%. While this remains a commanding position, it is not as overwhelming as in Alberta, leaving room for competitive races in some regions. The Liberal Party is at 33.4%, showing notable support in urban areas, particularly in Winnipeg, where they are expected to be competitive. Meanwhile, the New Democratic Party, NDP, sits at 14.7%, relying on its historical base of support in certain parts of Manitoba and hoping to gain ground in key ridings. The Green Party is polling at 2.3%, and the People's Party of Canada, PPC, is at 1.5%, with other parties making up 1% of the vote share. The Conservatives remain dominant in rural areas and much of Saskatchewan, where their support has been historically solid. However, the Liberals are putting up a fight in Manitoba, particularly in Winnipeg, where they are looking to hold on to or gain seats. The NDP's 14.7% suggests they will be competitive in select ridings, particularly in urban centers, but they face challenges in expanding their support across the region. Meanwhile, the PPC and Green Party have limited impact, but could still play a role in shifting the vote in tight races. With the Conservatives leading, but the Liberals gaining ground in Manitoba, this will be a region to watch. Will the Tories maintain their stronghold, or will we see urban Liberal gains? Ontario overview. The Liberal Party continues to hold the lead in Ontario, polling at 45.2%. This puts them ahead of the Conservatives, who stand at 39.6%, a competitive gap that could make all the difference in key ridings. The New Democratic Party, NDP, is currently polling at 9%, well behind the two frontrunners, but still holding influence in certain regions, particularly in parts of Toronto and Northern Ontario. The Green Party has 3% of the vote share, while the People's Party of Canada, PPC, sits at 2.5%, showing a minor presence, but one that could impact close races. Other parties make up 0.7% of the projected vote. Ontario remains a two-way race between the Liberals and Conservatives, with the Liberals maintaining a stronghold in urban centers like Toronto, Mississauga, and Ottawa, while the Conservatives dominate in rural and suburban areas. The NDP, while trailing far behind, still has pockets of support in downtown Toronto, Hamilton, and parts of Northern Ontario. However, with only 9.0%, they are struggling to compete on a larger scale. Meanwhile, the Green Party and PPC may not be major players, but their support could influence the outcome in closely contested ridings, especially if vote splitting occurs on either the left or right. With Ontario often deciding the outcome of federal elections, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will the Liberals maintain their lead, or will the Conservatives close the gap in the coming weeks? And what role will NDP voters play in this tight race? Quebec overview. The Liberal Party leads in Quebec with 40% of the projected vote share, maintaining a strong position in the province, particularly in Montreal and surrounding regions. The Bloc Québécois, BQ, is in second place with 25.8%, holding firm in many Francophone regions and remaining a key challenger to the Liberals in several ridings. Meanwhile, the Conservatives are polling at 22.3%, a respectable showing but still trailing both the Liberals and the Bloc, as they work to strengthen their appeal outside their traditional support base. The New Democratic Party, NDP, is struggling at 5.8%, far from the highs they once achieved in the province, while the Green Party and the People's Party of Canada, PPC, sit at 2.9% and 2.3%, respectively, with minimal influence. Other parties make up 0.9% of the projected vote. Quebec's political landscape remains highly competitive, with the Liberals leading overall, but the Bloc Québécois still holding a significant base in Francophone regions. The Conservatives, at 22.3%, continue to make inroads but remain a distant third, with their strongest support in Quebec City and some rural areas. For the NDP, the numbers remain disappointing. Once a dominant force in Quebec under Jack Layton's leadership, they are now struggling to maintain relevance, with their 5.8% share suggesting a limited role in this election. Meanwhile, the Bloc Québécois, despite being behind the Liberals, remains a serious contender in many ridings, especially outside Montreal. Their ability to consolidate support among nationalist voters will be key in determining their final seat count. With the Liberals leading, the Bloc remaining strong, and the Conservatives looking to gain ground, Quebec remains one of the most dynamic battlegrounds in this election. Will the Liberals solidify their lead, or can the Bloc mount a comeback in key ridings? And how much impact will the Conservatives truly have? Atlantic Canada overview. The Liberal Party continues to dominate in Atlantic Canada, polling at 52.2%, maintaining a commanding lead across Newfoundland and Labrador, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and Prince Edward Island. The Conservatives follow with 33.7%, a respectable showing but still well behind the Liberals, as they aim to flip key ridings. The New Democratic Party, NDP, sits at 8.7%, struggling to gain traction in a region where they have historically had pockets of support. Meanwhile, the Green Party is polling at 2.4%, the People's Party of Canada, PPC, at 1.8%, and other parties collectively make up 1.3% of the projected vote share. Atlantic Canada has long been a Liberal stronghold, and these numbers reinforce that trend, with the party maintaining a near 19-point lead over the Conservatives. The Conservatives, at 33.7%, are working to gain traction, particularly in more rural areas and parts of New Brunswick, but they still face an uphill battle to overcome the Liberal advantage. For the NDP, their 8.7% support suggests that while they may hold some influence in select ridings, their path to winning seats remains challenging. Meanwhile, the Green Party and PPC have minimal impact in the region, and their support is unlikely to shift the overall electoral landscape significantly. As things stand, the Liberals are on track for another dominant performance in Atlantic Canada, but the Conservatives are looking to close the gap. That wraps up our deep dive into the CBC News Poll Tracker for March 30th, 2025. With the race tightening, every shift in numbers matters. Stay tuned to today's Blueprint News for more updates, analysis, and insights as we count down to Election Day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for the latest political coverage.